Hi, I'm Shawn Douglass, an actor and director in Chicago, Illinois, and also a member of the theater department faculty at Northwestern University. And this is An Actor's Arc. I'm delighted that the fantastic Kate Fry is my guest for this episode. Kate has been a highly sought after talent at theaters across the Chicago area. Hi, Kate Fry. Welcome to An Actor's Arc.
Hi, Shawn. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
What was the first inkling that you had about being an actor or a performer, or what drew you to this profession, and when did that happen?
It's nothing like unusual, or it's very ordinary. Just like being in school and having, well, first I should say, being fortunate enough to be in a school system that gave that a lot of credence, and I got music classes, and if they weren't actual drama classes when I was in grade school, then we at least did a lot of plays, and so I remember I liked it from the get-go. I loved singing along to stuff, and I loved watching things and pretending like pretty much every kid. And I remember we did a sort of, in fourth grade, we did a very pared down, sanitized version of Oliver. And I played the Artful Dodger, and I just thought that was the coolest thing,
It's the best role.
Oh, it's the best role, and it's so fun. And I remember, we rehearsed song. It was mostly just like a series of songs and a couple scenes from Oliver. And I loved being part of it. I loved singing with a group. And I remember when we were all singing It's a Fine Life together, getting kind of caught up in the music and sort of improvising on our moves, still doing the moves, but like, feeling it and stuff. And it wasn't like planned, and thinking, oh, you can get caught up and still be part of this. And oh, this feels so good,
So when you say that you really enjoyed it, what if you're able to look back as your adult self, what do you think the young Kate was getting out of that?
Feeling maybe like feeling belonging, feeling like I was part of something a group was working on. I thought that was really, I had two older brothers. They both went away to school at relatively early ages, like before college. So I think I missed just being part of an immediate group, and feeling like I was being taken care of, that felt good. And also making it look like I knew I was expert at something, that I was all right at it, I think it probably, like with most kids, it comes down to self-esteem and community, both of those things. It made me feel good. It was fun. It's fun.
Was that in Evanston?
That I grew up in Winnetka. I grew up in
Illinois?
the sort of typical North Shore, very homogenous upbringing.
And
yeah.
And then you went to school at Northwestern University?
Yeah, I went to Northwestern, and I was in the performance studies department, which I loved. When I was going there, and the years before that and after that, it was always a thing where there'd be like a small group of majors freshman year, and then it would grow and grow, because I think largely because of the smaller crew requirement. Like I think you only had to do 2 as opposed to a lot more as a theater major. But I had an acting teacher in high school named Suzanne Adams, who loved what that department was about, and thought she was definitely of the mindset that a conservatory approach was not a great approach, at least not for her, and certainly not for me, that you're going to go to this wonderful world-class university. You should be taking everything. You should know all sorts of things. And you should really soak it up. And so a lot of the appeal of performance studies was there's a huge literature requirement, and it could be anything. It could be British fiction, it could be Russian lit. Looking back, I kind of wish I'd minored in Russian lit, because those were some wonderful professors. I don't know if they're still there. Saul Morrison, Andrew Wachtel, they were incredible. They were some of my favorite classes at school. And so the performance studies department was about being familiar and versed in all different kinds of literature and adapting it to performance. And it, by the way, it didn't even have to be fiction. It could be nonfiction. There were a lot of interesting partnerships between graduate students in the sociology department and undergrads in the performance studies department. And it sort of was about getting the most out of a text by adapting it to a performance. It was really cool. Dwight Conquergood was the late great Dwight Conquergood was a wonderful force in that department, and Paul Edwards, who I took a lot of classes with and learned a lot from too.
Did you take acting classes while you were at Northwestern?
Yeah, I did.
Too?
I did. I took acting with Bud Byer until maybe midway through my senior year, and then there was some conflicting classes that I was interested in taking, and so
what did you feel like you knew or understood about acting when you were in college or finishing at Northwestern?
I felt like I really knew what I wanted to do, and I had all the desire and really not many of the skills. And it wasn't for lack of good teachers, or I think it was life experience more than anything. I knew the kind of work that I really admired. I could see it in Chicago all the time. If I went down and saw stuff at Steppenwolf or the Goodman, and I knew what I wanted, but I just couldn't really.
What did you feel you were lacking?
I didn't know what it was. I think it was also, I didn't feel like I was emotionally available enough. The kind of work I think I was attracted to also was often quite pyrotechnical and full of tears and feeling. And of course that comes later, whether you want it or not. Like, I challenge anybody middle-aged and older to stop crying. It's hard. Yeah, I think it was a question of just comfort in one's own skin.
How did you proceed from there? Were you, did you go to graduate school?
I didn't. I came close, but I decided not to go. I almost went to the Old Globe program in San Diego, which is a terrific program. And sometimes I do wonder, I'm like, I probably should have, but it would have been good for me to live somewhere else. And it's a really cool program. But I did what a lot of people do. I waited tables. I worked at Starbucks, pre-Frappuccino, by the way. Like, if that doesn't date me, I don't know what does. And then, worked, got hired at Drury Lane Oakbrook my first year out of college for the first of 2 different musical versions of It's a Wonderful Life that I ended up doing, which is just a weird thing. And
in the same year or just over your?
No, about 2-3 years apart. So that was weird. Yeah, so I did, I was non-equity for a few years, and I did a lot of, I was able to do a lot of musicals in addition to a couple plays, and which is funny because I can sing. I'm a singer, but I am not a singer with a capital S. I know a lot of amazing singers. I am not one of them, but that's okay.
Well, let's just take a pause here because you're like, well, I didn't know a lot about acting.
Yeah.
But I was able to get cast in professional production within a year out of school at a respected entertainment theater,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of impressive for a young person right out of school.
Well, I remember thinking I was the luckiest person because I was going to get paid $300 a week. I just remember thinking, I don't need anything else right now. I quit my waiting job and then realized really quickly that I needed something else. So I started working at Starbucks. But Yeah, I thought I was living the dream. I just thought it was great.
And
And
can
I
you
was
remember what that was
super
like
happy.
to be around actors who had been playing their trade for a while, and what?
It was wonderful, and it was so refreshingly, I think the thing that I carried, one thing I carried with me from Northwestern was on the on the positive side, a real curiosity and a familiarity with classical texts, whether it be the Greeks or Chekhov or Shakespeare to a slightly lesser extent. But I felt like I had a good literary background in those things, but I was kind of, a know-it-all. I thought I knew, I thought to seem smart when I was talking about them was important. And I'm sure I was just oh, I'm sure that was really irritating to be around. But at Oak Brook, I was around these people, a lot of whom were either dancers by trade or singers by trade, who were and you have 2 weeks. You got to slap that thing up in 2 weeks and make something presentable. So you can talk about Chekhov all you want, but I need to know that you're going to be in your light and you're going to make it believable and you're going to fill this moment. And yeah, it was like on the job training, more the sort of out of the frying pan into the fire, and so much fun. And these people they were so good at their jobs, and did it with
What
such
made them good? What made them good?
well, like there are these dancers who were just like incredibly just great at what they did, or they could sing and also be believable in a scene. There's people who were in that production that I'm still friends with, like Marilyn Bogatich, who I ended up working with a few other times later in my career, who didn't make a big thing of it, could do it all with enormous skill and humor, but yet be proud of what they did. And then that little crowd made me aware of other people in the community. They weren't in this show, but I heard, boy, did people love John Rieger and Paula Scrifano. Boy, did I hear a lot about them. Boy, did I hear a lot about Guy Adkins. And I was working with his partner at the time. So I was able to kind of learn about these important members of the community who had a lot to teach us and still do.
That's great. I feel like I remember that as well.
Yeah,
Who's that?
totally.
Who's that?
Yeah,
Oh.
why did everyone seems to claim ownership or claim a friendship with this person? There's got to be a reason. I wonder why.
Yeah, why is there a buzz when this actor's in the house
Yeah,
or something,
exactly.
right? If they come to see
Totally.
the show. Yeah,
Totally.
great. So you started out as a non-equity actor,
Yeah.
and did you join the union in your 20s? When did what?
Yeah, I joined the union. I had an opportunity to get my card up at Peninsula Players in Door County.
Which is
Doing
a summer stock, long-standing summer stock
Yeah,
theater.
it's great. And if you get a chance to work there, you should. And it's fun. And that's also, you don't have a super long rehearsal period, but somehow invariably the quality of the work ends up being good. And you have Greg Winkler running the theater. So you have somebody who's been doing this a long time, who's really good at it, who has a lot to offer. I learned a lot from working with him that summer. And they were all like, they all were making a living doing this, and it was cool.
What did you learn from Greg?
I learned that it was okay to, and this makes him sound like humorless, and he's not. He's like one of the funniest people I know. He's hilarious, but it's okay to take your work seriously and to connect with things that perhaps aren't in vogue at the time. Like he was doing this really charming play called The Enchanted Cottage, which was a film also in, I don't remember, the 40s maybe, with Dorothy McGuire. And it's a very sweet story. The power actually of a simple story. And a way kind of, I think looking back, now that I'm articulating it, I think it steered me away from pretense and further towards, I don't know, heart.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then how did your career start to build in Chicago? How did you gain momentum?
I think, I don't know, but I think luck had an enormous amount to do with it. Being willing to work for less money had a lot to do with it. And I think starting work at Court Theater helped me a lot. That in that time, in the 90s, they were doing, every year they were doing a rotating rep. And that was a great, I think I first started working there in 1996 when I was 25 to do one of the rep plays. And for whatever reason, because they liked working with me, and I'm sure being young and pliable had something to do with it, I was able to go back there and do that rep a lot, and work with who I still consider some of the greatest actors in Chicago or the country, and have that experience of doing repertory, which is unlike any other, and I think so good, but it's really expensive, and they don't do it anymore. It's hard. It's hard to pull off on an annual basis. It's also hard if people are, I think it's hard on families. It's hard on, there's 2 techs instead of 1. But I think that had a lot to do with it. That exposed me to a lot of different people, and I learned probably the most from those days, I think.
And what was the kind of material?
Oh gosh, the first thing I did there was the play version of The Barber of Seville by Beaumarchais. Who does that? Charlie Noel. That's who. We did a lot of Chekhov, or Chekhov sort of, what would you call it? Chekhov adjacent. There's a wonderful Russian film called Unfinished Piece for Mechanical Piano, and there's a play version of that exists, and very much in the tradition of Chekhov. I think it's adapted very loosely from Platonov, one of the Chekhov plays that people don't really do. And that and Shakespeare, Philip Barry, we did Philadelphia Story, just lots of old plays done in a really new, fresh way.
Was there any crossover between the actors that you had worked with in the musical theater in the early days?
A little bit, but I think CST did more to sort of foster the crossover between musical. Chicago Shakespeare Theater did that. I'll get to that later, but at Court Theater, I got to meet and work with people like Hollis Resnick and Marianne Thebus and Barbara Robertson and Christopher Donahue and John Rieger. I mean, as somebody who was younger than they were, who was looking to have a career and a life similar to theirs, who could just sort of sit back and watch, that was a really, really great experience. And one that I'm still grateful for.
So when you mentioned that some of these actors had the kind of life you were looking for, what did that include?
Oh, they worked a lot. They were successful actors who were able to make money doing that. Brad Mott, that's another one. They also, a lot of them were married and had families in their personal life, in their home life. And I'm thinking of John and Paula. I'm thinking of Brad Mott. They seem to be on solid ground at home. There was a groundedness to them that I felt made them reliable as actors and as people without a lot. They brought it and to their work and left it at work. The drama. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice quality to have.
Yeah,
in the rehearsal room.
I mean, let's be honest, it's rare.
Wondering if in this sort of middle period of your young actor starting to build a reputation and a career in Chicago, if there were any experiences with a director, with a playwright, or a piece of work, or through these interactions with some of these actors you've named or others, where you solved an acting problem for yourself, or something was opened up to you, or how you felt you began to mature as an actor?
There was one experience in particular. One of the years when Court was doing the rotating rep, they did a production of Cherry Orchard, and I didn't have a particularly large role. I was Dunyasha, the sort of silly servant. And but Charlie Newell, who was directing it, used the translation of this wonderful guy, Paul Schmidt, who he is no longer with us, but he worked with a lot of different people. I think in the later years in his career with the Wooster Group in New York, was a Russian speaker himself. And we had a workshop with him. I can't remember how long, maybe a week before rehearsal started, on kind of just soaking up the sensibility of that kind of humor and that world. And Paul Schmidt was a big proponent for giving a lot of the power, sort of, or at least a lot of the decision making to the actors. He was a big fan of kind of fostering a big and detailed backstory, which I suppose is sort of very Stanislavski-esque, although he sort of, he could take or leave Stanislavski because he thought he could be a little too heavy-handed in his approach. He also had a really light touch. Interestingly, he also really encouraged for that particular kind of play to not have blocking. He encouraged Charlie to encourage us to make it different every time, as long as it was rooted. You had to have a few key grounding places where you needed to be physically or emotionally. But other than that, as long as you know where the kitchen is and you know where the billiard room is and you know where outside is, just see what happens. Just go make a mess. So that was the world we lived and played in when we were rehearsing that play. We were rehearsing it in rep with another play, an Oscar Wilde play called An Ideal Husband. And that was directed very differently. And Charlie, I think, did that intentionally to make the product different too. It was very precise. We had precise blocking. But I think, and it ended up being a really terrific show. But I think this approach of working that way, if you're really familiar with the play, that you should, Paul Schmidt's, I think, encouragement to Charlie also was rooted in, no one is going to know the character better than the person playing them. So you should really, if you cast well, you should really follow their lead. And not to say that Charlie wasn't able to politely ask us to veer in a certain direction. He certainly was, but there was a lot of private chats between him and a character, and kind of what's going on with you and this person, and okay, let's explore that more. And I'm going to talk to so-and-so, and we're going to see what their side of the story is. And the need that sometimes in a rehearsal room, you have a director or other actors who really need to build consensus on what's going on. And Paul Schmidt and Charlie Newell thought, actually, the less consensus there is between characters about what is happening, the better. Everybody is, one of the things I love about Chekhov is everyone is so in their own, everyone is so the lead in their own play. Yeah. And
that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And we all are in the story of our life. We're the protagonist, of course. And he encouraged that sort of inherent egocentrism that we all have as we're going through our day. And not in a selfish actor way, like I'm going to be downstage center, but to really be single-minded, to I think a lot of the time, and rightfully so, we're concerned with being polite to our scene partners. And he really encouraged us not to be, and he would take charge of that. If something was getting if you were upstaging yourself or your partner, he would fix it and make sure that you were not going completely off the rails. But that, I think, I saw that aesthetic and that approach show up lots of times with Charlie after that production was finished.
And was that
And I
something
know,
that became part of your own aesthetic
yes,
as you were able in a given production?
yes. And to change it up, and as long as it was okay with who I was working with. And that showed up a lot in other stuff that I did not at that theater. I'm thinking of a two-hander I did with Mark Montgomery at Writers Theater called The Letters. It was just a wonky little play. Also, just incidentally taking place in Russia, but that's not really why this aesthetic worked there. It was just the two of us in that bookstore space, that tiny space on Vernon that writers first inhabited, and directed by Kimberly Senior, who also encouraged us to move in that direction. It was different every single night. And the moment it
And Mark
started,
is great at engaging in that
yeah,
too.
yeah, he was just ready to play. And that was a lot of fun. And I don't think I would have felt comfortable working that way if I hadn't had that experience in the Cherry Orchard, however many years before, in 1998.
Mm.
So,
Well, Kate, I remember we only worked on one play, which also happened to be a Chekhov play.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Uncle Vanya.
yes.
Just went out of my head. But that's one of the things that I remember about, in subtle ways, about working with you. And for me, I think I was probably on the other side of that I wanted things to be precise and fixed. And one of the things I really appreciated about working with you was, that you were just one of the best listeners on stage that I've ever worked with.
Well, it's nice
So
to
that
hear.
was one. And two, that it was different every night. And so I felt like you made me listen, because I didn't know where you were going to go quite. I'm just saying thank you, because that was a moment for me in my journey in which I thought, oh, it is okay for me to, within the boundaries we've decided as
Right,
a
right. And
company
that's
and
important to have that conversation. That's
right.
no, there's still moments I remember from that production between you and me that I really like. And I can't take credit for it. It was other people that kind of introduced me to that. And also, you know, in our defense, in actors' defense, there's a reason why we want to be polite, and there's a reason why we want to build consensus. We want to get hired again. We want to be somebody, we want to be a good camper. And that's huge. No one
Some
wants
of
to,
us, some
no
of
one,
us want
well,
to be good.
fair enough. Fair enough. But you know, no one wants to be a pain in the ass. We've all had those experiences. And I think it is good to err in that direction, to be mindful of your colleagues. But I think that can go too far, and you can end up being so adaptable that you forget to kind of advocate for your own character and your own journey and the larger story. I know as an audience member, that's the thing that I really love watching, is going, oh my God, it's a little dangerous out there.
Uh-huh.
It's a little crazy. I really don't know what's going to happen. I find that so much fun to watch.
Well, that's when it's alive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why we love it when something goes wrong, right? I mean, especially when we're in the audience, when it's not happening to us, you know, how are they going to respond? That's always it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, you don't get that if you're watching something on television. I mean, God bless Netflix and all the other things that has offered stuff streaming this past year when we can't do plays or go to plays. I'm so grateful. I've seen so many great things, but you don't get that. You don't get that. I am seeing this one version that is never going to happen this way again. That's magical.
Yeah, and that's both because the audience changes night to night, as well as what the performers are doing and responding to. Right. Yeah, it's beautiful in that it's fleeting.
Yeah.
Way, right?
Yeah, God.
So listen, somewhere along the line, you met a guy named Timothy Kane,
He's all right.
who is also an actor who
Yeah.
happens to be your husband,
Yes.
and a wonderful actor too.
Yes.
And can you just sort of catch us up on the arc of your journey on the personal side, just a little bit? You don't need to go into detail about your
No, well, I
personal life.
won't. Don't worry.
But just wondering how that fits with your career and how you've managed to keep those things in balance for yourself.
Yeah. Well, let's see. This is personal, but I think I want to talk about it because was such an important part of my life. So my best friend, the late great Guy Adkins, introduced us. And I had seen Tim on stage before and thought he was great. In fact, I remember going to a play he was in and waiting around, hoping that he would come out and I could meet him, but it's too cool for that. So I didn't get to, but I met him through Guy and became friends with him. And then we ended up being an item. And he's also somebody I trust more than anybody in terms of talking about if I'm running into a problem in rehearsal or if I'm hitting a roadblock, or I feel like we're drawn to a similar aesthetic. But something about him is that the older he gets, just keeps getting better and better at what he does. Like the rest of us are kind of settling into our shtick, and our bag of tricks. And he still really surprises me, especially, on stage, and the depth of what he can do, the groundedness, the openness, he's
So
really
that's kind
good.
of a wonderful resource to have in your home.
Oh my God, it's the best. And it's free. I mean,
How
people
much for
pay
a
big
coaching
money for
session?
that. I know, right? No, and yeah, very. I'm
What's something that
lucky.
he helped you with?
I think he has a really good balance of being, and I think this is something I try to emulate, is being completely, he knows the text, he knows it backwards and forwards. He understands things like the folio technique for Shakespeare and will use it if it's helpful. Also the first one to throw it out if it's not useful, not a purist at all. Tim also so he's able to sort of hold opposite things in tension together at the same time in that way, like being really smart and really grounded in the written word and the written version, but making it come to life and giving it like a muscularity to it and a athleticism to it, and yet still be relaxed. I mean, to hell with him.
Well,
who does
do you
that?
feel, well, he does.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that, that home life and that groundedness that you admired in John Rieger and Paula Scrifano and their relationship and work, do you feel like you've been able to achieve some of that in your life?
I mean, every day is different. And of course, COVID turned everything upside down and we have a lot of home life now. But I feel really grateful. I remember reading, I don't know how long ago it was. I'm going to say like 6 years ago. I remember reading a profile on Ursula Le Guin in the New Yorker. And I'm not a sci-fi reader. That's not my thing, but she, I can't remember if it was an interview with her. She talked about her work and people were asking her these fantastical stories that you come up with, and they're also feminist, and you're life must be so, how do you balance being a wife? I'm sorry to say, I don't remember if she's a mother. I want to say she is, but I don't know. And I think they were kind of trying to steer her in the direction of like, I move through life that way. And she said the opposite. She said, there's something about, I'm totally paraphrasing, but she said, there's something about being rooted in the everyday trivial tasks of things like laundry and cleaning the house. And that's sort of like humdrum quotidian existence that kind of allows you to do the other thing, kind of gives you, I don't know if it's because it anchors you so you can be braver in your choices, but probably feeling safe too,
So there can be challenges being in a relationship with another artist.
Right.
Because of both careers wanting to move forward,
Right.
or in some cases competition between people who are in a relationship.
Right.
And so it sounds like you've got a great supportive partner in your journey, but I wonder if there's any challenges that come with being in a relationship with another actor.
Sure, of course. I mean, less so now because we're older and we don't we don't care as much what other people think, or which is nice. But of course, I think earlier on, and we got better at it the longer we were together. But oh sure, I mean, we try. Early on, it didn't matter if we were working at the same time because there were no babies hanging in the balance, and we could kind of do whatever we wanted, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
After having kids, we really did make an effort to the best of our ability, sort of take turns, yeah, you did that play, but I have an opportunity to do this, and you were the last one working, so I would like to do this. And for the most part, we were able to kind of navigate that. And sometimes it involved more than just taking turns. Like if somebody was interested in doing something that wasn't a lot of money, I would be like, well, okay, why don't I understudy? We also kind of quickly realized that we needed a little more stability to make this whole family thing work out. And so Tim started teaching several years ago, adjunct. And that helped a lot. And but also just worked his butt off. I would be it would be dishonest of me not to acknowledge that also I come from a very privileged, wonderful family. I had a safety net. If I was low on money, I knew that I was never going to end up out on the street. I knew I was never going to not have enough to pay the mortgage. In short, I mean, I reap the benefits of privilege. And so, yes, did Tim and I work hard? Yes, we did. But it was so much easier for us than it was and is for a lot of other people. And I feel like it's really important to acknowledge that and say that I had a lot of help and a lot of things that I didn't have to worry about that a lot of people do, So.
No, I thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true for a lot of us. Can you tell me if being a mother has changed your acting at all?
Yeah, I mean,
Is that an offensive question?
No, not at all. And I think it's a natural question. And I would have to say yes. I well, it's twofold. On the one hand, I feel like I can focus more at work because work is work, and work is when I'm going to get, I'm much less easily distracted because I want to maximize my time out of the house. When at home, it's going to be harder for me to pay attention. So in that level, and just like a practical, like being able to be present and keep your eye on the ball, I'm better at it than I'm super flaky in just it's my default personality. But I also think it just, it sounds super corny, but my heart's bigger.
What do you mean by that?
I know what it's like to not just have my head up my own ass. And and I don't think one necessarily needs children to do that. I know a lot of people who aren't parents who do that. I was not that. I didn't have that quality pre-kids, I don't think, or I maybe thought I did, but I'm not the main focus of my life.
And so how does that translate into your work?
I think I'm more compassionate. I think like you and I talking about the characters in Three Sisters earlier, like now I look at someone like Cool Yegan and I think, oh God, that poor man. Oh, that could be me. When you're a 20-year-old woman, you're like, well, clearly I am Masha, or clearly, everyone is just doing the best they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and also the whole, it's just a play thing. Like if you have a bad show or a bad audition, and I mean, I have a lot of both of those things, a lot. Or if you, okay, I'm sorry that happened to you, but it's just a play. It's wonderful to care about it, and you should care about it. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. I don't remember what famous person said that, but it's really true. And you should have it cost you a little something when you're out there, but the sun will still rise in the morning if you have a bad show.
What's the hardest thing you've ever had to do on stage?
Oh, I have no idea.
Is there something you didn't think you were capable of doing that you found that you were capable of doing?
I've never really thought about that, Shawn.
Is there anything you were scared of doing?
Oh, I am scared every time. Oh yeah, totally. I'm scared every time, for sure.
What's scary?
That I'm gonna look stupid, and that but I've also learned that if I don't feel that way a little bit, then I'm not bringing enough to the table. I think you should feel vulnerable. I mean, you should feel safe too, but in fact, I remember, speaking of that production of Uncle Vanya, because they were so close, and this was pre-writers theater for me, so I wasn't used to people being that close.
The audience members.
Yes, I remember talking to Guy after, I think we just had like a dress rehearsal or something, and I'm like, I don't know, but I feel really embarrassed. I think I'm on the right track, but I feel really embarrassed, like I'm showing a side. And he was like, is that a good thing? He's like, and why is that good? I'm like, I can't describe it, but I think, and I think in order to get to that place where you can allow yourself to go to that vulnerable, naked place, you do have to feel safe. And
when I speak with my students about that, it can be a confusing thing about how much of myself do I have to share, how much risk do I need to take, what does it mean to be vulnerable in front of other people. And I just wonder if you have a way of explaining how that happens to you.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to try to articulate, but I'm going to try, because I know
Atta girl.
my 20-year-old self would really be interested in the answer. I think I was drawn to pursuing theater as a career because I liked feeling like I knew what the outcome would be, because life is so unpredictable and I didn't feel good about who I was. So I could hide behind someone else and make it look like I knew what I was doing. And even if the story grew uncomfortable, I know the outcome. So it's all going to feel really safe and predictable for me. And then, of course, as I get older and hopefully more mature, I think you realize that the parts of yourself that I'm going to talk about shame, the parts of yourself that you're ashamed of are actually often the parts that are the most interesting. And I don't mean to pimp out your issues. That is not what I mean at all. Or to use your work as therapy. Also not what I mean. And the difference is subtle. But I think having the courage to, I don't know how to articulate it, listening to, oh God, that sounds like a bad self-help podcast. And I listen to some really good ones. This sounds like a bad one, but like listening to the smallest voice, like the voice in your, now, like the Dickinson poem, "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul." The most like fragile, quietest center of you, giving that air and finding an opening to that, I think is worth sharing. When I think about people I like watching, or if I'm trying to determine if I'm responding to someone's work or not, does it seem like they are giving something, or does it seem like they are taking something? And from the audience or from their scene partners. And I think earlier in my career, I think I was a taker. Like, I'm going to do this to feed my self-esteem, to make myself feel loved or appreciated or admired. But I think it's certainly better to watch, way more fun to do if it's about giving something and sharing something, rather than trying to cover it up just to open it.
That's great. No, that's wonderful. And I think too, when theater's working at its best and it's at its highest, most profound,
right, which is, I mean, how often does that happen?
Level.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
we go to the theater to see what it is to be human.
Yeah.
Right. And to share, to have a shared experience of all that it means to be human.
It's spiritual. Yeah.
And so you can't have that experience without feeling people's vulnerabilities, flaws, upsets.
Right. It's a lot. It's messy. Yeah. Yeah.
So the actor, I love your idea of givers and takers, and thinking about that gift that we're giving to an audience, as well as to the people we're on stage with, as material that they can play with and use and respond to. I think that's lovely.
And how thrilling too, when you're working with other people who are ready to play, who kind of feel that, and that's really fun. It's exciting.
Well, listen, you are only like mid-career, so you've got a lot of journey ahead of you.
Let's hope that theater thing comes back.
Yeah, well, it's gonna. And I'm excited to see what the rest of your arc is going to be, Kate.
You too, Shawn.
I want to ask you, to play our little 3-2-1 game. 3 actors who you really admire and a quick reason why.
Number 1, there's a wonderful actor here in Chicago named Alan Gilmore. And I admire him a lot because I had admired him from afar as a fan for many years, seeing him in a lot of things. I'm thinking of when he was the Player King and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. And I saw him in the beautiful production of Man in the Ring at Court Theater. So I saw someone who was technically extremely proficient and great with language, and also in terms of like not being afraid to bear it all emotionally. He was just a killer. He was just so good. And then I now am lucky enough to consider him a friend, and the way he moves through his life, the word that comes to mind is equanimity. He is kind to everyone. He doesn't sweat the small stuff. He is loose, even when things are hard or tense, finds a way to kind of to not clench, but to still kind of breathe through it.
Who else? A couple more.
As a fan, like of somebody I don't know, that British actor Simon Russell Beale. Oh God. Tim and I have been lucky enough to see him live a couple of times, and did not see his Hamlet. I've heard from I have a couple of friends who've flown to different cities so they could see it. I'm not one of the lucky ones who's seen it. I wish I was, but saw him in the Tom Stoppard play Jumpers in London. It just blew my mind, and saw him, and this was a great experience just as an actor, in first preview of something of Galileo Galilei. And so I'm sure, you don't have a sense yet at that stage in the process where your highs and lows are yet. You're still getting acclimated technically. If it were somebody who said to me they saw first preview, I would be so mad, but I'm not Simon Russell Beale, and I don't deliver the kind of thing that I saw, which was just, again, I find myself coming back to this quality that I was talking about with my husband, who's going to be the third person I name probably, but that balance of life and energy, and also total absence of tension. I don't want to say relax because that makes it sound like, ooh, but sort of muscularity, but yet complete receptivity to any change in what he's seeing or hearing. Very sensitive to his, that's what it seemed like, to his immediate surroundings, which was really cool. And like anybody, I love that Judi Dench. I just think she's perfect.
That's 2+.
Yeah.
And Tim is going to be your third?
Yeah. And I mean, I've already kind of explained why,
Right.
Hasn't he had enough attention, this conversation? No, but that is really true. And I love tons of people. So
2.
yeah.
I call it tricks and treats. The trick is a trick of the trade, whatever that may mean to you.
Yeah.
And then a treat is something that you still get a kick out of being an actor.
Oh gosh, I got to think about that first one. I think the trick, and they're not novel ideas, but
That's okay.
I have
They may be
two.
novel.
I have 2, maybe 3, but the power of deep breath, the power of not forgetting to breathe when you're getting nervous, or if something goes wrong. My feet are on the floor, and I'm going to take a deep breath. I mean, truly, and I think of it as like breathing through my feet. Like the soles of your feet are like gateways oxygen into the ground. Now I sound as weird as I really am, but
That's all right. That's what we are as artists.
yeah, breathing deep breath grounded in your feet. I think that is just a good MO.
And how about a treat? Something that you still revel in or delight in about being an actor?
Oh, when things go wrong and people responding to them. I just think it's the funniest thing. Watching how people deal with mishaps, or how I do if I, like it was that is so delightful and fun. Or when doors don't open or whatever, I just think it's a hoot.
And the last one is one. And that's one thing that you want to continue to get better at, one thing that you're looking forward to achieving or striving for, any of those.
The idea of doing a play right now seems so remote because of COVID. I'm looking forward to just hopefully doing something with people in a room together in less than 6 feet apart from them, like hugging and kissing and all that. I'm really excited for that. I haven't done a lot of like I've done like British. I've never done like Scottish. I think that'd be cool. I think
A dialect, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
I also think it would be cool to I've never done any Beckett. I think that'd be super cool. And I'm getting older, so it makes a lot more sense to me now, the whole aesthetic of it. I'm also just really looking forward to watching stuff too. Like I've got at least one of my kids is interested in doing plays at school, and the little of that I've been able to do, I just love. So I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Kate, I'm going to accept all of those answers, even though you cheated the system a little bit.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's been so awesome to not only see you again, but also to learn so much about what your journey has been. And I, for one, look forward to what's next when we get to go back out there and do it again. And just a delight.
Oh, it's fun for me too. I really enjoyed it.